Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of HIPTHER Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good day, good morning, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining another episode of HIPTHER Talks. Today we are having Eduard Montserrat with us, co-founder and CEO at Hatchet. Hi, Eduard, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the company, about Hatchet. What do you do? Just give us a little insight on your side of the world.
Absolutely. Hi, Alex. Happy to be here with you today. So Hatchet is a company that we measure live streaming gaming. We provide measurement of what is going on Twitch, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, all these different live streaming platforms. So content in it, there's gaming, there's creators, there's esports. All the content in it, we measure it and we provide analytics about it. We started this company about 5 years ago at this point by we provided an early version of software for streamers to help them better understand how their content is being consumed. And we keep evolving the company to a point that today we serve some of the biggest companies in the industry, such as Riot Games, Activision, 100 Thieves, and many other teams, talent agencies, and video game publishers. What we try to make is we try to make the data in those platforms accessible. Gaming moves very quick, very fast. There's a lot of trends, and people in those organizations may not have the time to really decipher and spend hours and hours digging into the data. So we try to move beyond just providing broad data, spreadsheets of data, to something that's more actionable, so that these companies can use it on their day-to-day operations, but they're obviously very busy running their businesses. And some of the values that we try to provide to our customers is that they have to spend the least amount of time possible interpreting data and
basically fast-tracking them to the result instead of the process.
Exactly. So we like to say internally that we provide different lenses to read the industry. We sometimes refer to a microscope or a telescope, depending what you want to see. So in some instances, you might want to analyze trends and see what is going on at the bigger picture, and maybe help you make decisions moving forward, much more important foundational decisions. But sometimes you might want to look at things in the microscope level because you've done an activation with a brand, you're working on a very specific partnership, so you want to know how that activation or how the stream performed last week. So that's why we say these lenses to read the data.
Mm-hmm. Really, really interesting. I've just had a couple of weeks ago a podcast with someone, and we were talking about how much video content is going on online generally. And we came across a number that really, really blew my mind. On a daily basis, there's over 30 years of video content uploaded on YouTube. Do you have any idea? I know we haven't discussed it, but do you have an approximate idea of how much video content is streamed on a daily basis?
I have not prepared that number. We do have, I don't have that number now on top of my head. We obviously have that number in our platform, but there are like millions of streamers every month. Literally millions of streamers broadcasting, some of them would broadcast a few hours, others would broadcast 8 hours. But the amount of content that's being published, that's accessible through those platforms is obviously close to being unreachable or unseeable for anyone. I mean, we're talking about millions of years of content to be seen. So obviously you need systems, you need big data algorithms and data treatment techniques to really digest all this content in a way that's actionable for the people, right? For the organizations in this industry.
Okay, and since you mentioned numbers, I know that Stream Hatchet recently published the annual streaming report. I'm really curious about what statistics did you find as being the more interesting, some fun facts, some insights.
Yeah, no, there are quite a few, and that's correct. We just released our yearly report. It's free to download. You can go to our webpage, streamhatchet.com, to get a copy of it. One of the insights that I can highlight is that streaming continues to grow. It grew about 20% last year compared to the previous year, which is a big number compared to 2020 to 2019. It grew almost 70%. So it's fueled mostly because of the lockdown, but we were expecting probably not that huge of an increase this year compared to that last year was an unimaginable growth that we experienced. But it continues to push forward, and we've seen that Twitch as a platform has consolidated in some of the markets that prior to pandemic times was relatively a small presence. I'm talking about Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking. Actually, if you go to the top 10 moments of the year, 5 of those are either Spanish or Portuguese speaking streams. So we've seen like Twitch and other platforms, YouTube and Facebook as well, have become much more of a worldwide phenomenon. That before it was maybe more localized, or was English was very, very predominant in these platforms. So that's, and then we see other more anecdotal or more funny things, like the number one title or the number one game most watched of the year was Grand Theft Auto 5, which is a title that was released 8 years ago. So we see this title had tremendous success on live streaming and continues to drive massive amounts of viewership. Also, we saw the rise of mobile titles that have been popular for quite a while, but last year was definitely a huge increase on popularity. And I'm talking specifically Arena.
I think that this was the logical step that had to be taken, the increase in mobile names, because the lockdown, I think, influenced that a lot.
Yeah, we saw PUBG Mobile and Garena Free Fire numbers significantly increase, and specifically for platforms such as Facebook Live, where mobile titles represent close to 50% of the viewership. Specifically because Facebook has a tremendous large presence in Southeast Asia, which it makes to, in that region, these mobile titles are huge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as we said, the pandemic situation changed things a little bit. In terms of the data you have since the last year, what are the trends? What are the main trends? What are the biggest directions that you can see?
In terms of consumption, or in terms of, well, I guess what I would say is that these platforms will continue to provide more enriching experiences to the audiences, and the game publishers are gonna integrate much deeper onto Twitch and then all to these platforms. Actually, Twitch released a series of API updates for game publishers very recently, and we saw like games like Escape from Tarkov gain a massive amount of viewership due to Twitch drops and other connections with the Twitch ecosystem. So we think that will drive the future of gaming, deeper integrations with content and the actual game and the viewers, and become a much more connected ecosystem.
Mhm. I see. Is Twitch that big? I mean, I used Twitch, and for from time to time, I'm logging into to check things over there. But personally, I'm not that much of a Twitch user. But I know that everyone is talking about Twitch, especially in the gaming community. Is it that big? Has it become a necessity?
I think it's growing at a rate that indicates that Twitch will continue to be part and will be a bigger part of the consumption of media in the future. And we're specifically talking about Twitch because is the leading in the category. But we at Stream Hatchet, we measure around 14 different live streaming platforms, and some of them have large presence on other regions, as I was mentioning, for Facebook in Southeast Asia. South Korea has another very predominant platforms. So I would consider this form of media, live streaming, specifically in the gaming category, to continue to be a very important piece of the consumption of people. There's a question whether that's going to cross the gaming world and step into the mainstream world, and where you're going to have like other sorts of content like sports, which we see a little bit of a sports going on Twitch, but maybe could have a bigger presence. I don't know, comedy shows, fashion, you name it. There could be much more diverse content going on there. I guess that's I cannot predict if that's going to happen. That has to be with direction of those companies, of like Twitch in this case, if they really want to position that platform as a platform for all kinds of media, or they want to continue to have a much more focus on gaming. We just gaming has this particularly thing that the gamers are very recurrent, and I think that's something that these platforms like, that gamers tune in very regularly to Twitch and this platform, that creates a very sustainable business model when it comes to subscriptions and baits. I wonder if that would happen with other content that might be less recurrent on the viewership side. But I guess that's to be seen. There's also the metaverse and all these things happening, which I think is going to be a reality at some point. Maybe next year. We're still far from seeing that, but these evolutions in the media consumption, in a much more enriching experience. At the end, Twitch name is Twitch Interactive Inc. So they really wanted to emphasize the interactivity when they named the company. And that's something that, from a perspective of pure, if I try to be more analytical, I would say it's superior than TV, right? I mean, it's active, you have chat, you can engage with the creators, you can do much more things. You can engage with the rest of the audience, something that's very complicated to do on other media. So it seems to me natural that this way to consume will continue to gain more and more followers in the next few years.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting fact. I didn't know the full name of the company. Although I think that the interactive part in Twitch Interactive was meant to, I think it was targeting the gamers themselves to interact with each other, but right now that can have a different spin to interact with the game. And I think if the guys from Twitch are going to watch our podcast, maybe they'll pop an idea from here. So I want to get back a little bit to the report you mentioned before. What findings were the ones that surprised you the most?
One of the things that surprised me the most, and it's not a good one to mention, but is the low presence of female streamers in the creators. So only 5% of the top 200 creators are females. That would be the top 200 based on viewership across Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. So that's a very, very low number to reflect on and to see if those platforms and the community in general can do something to remediate this issue. And it's a small increase compared to 2020. I believe it was around 3% on the top 200. So it's just a 2% increase. It's very, very, very small. And if you look at even bigger numbers like top 1,000, the numbers are slightly better, but it's not much better. So yeah, that's something, as I said, that would need to be addressed, and the community and everyone should make their best to change this. It's not good for the industry.
I see. Well, maybe that's a subject to discuss more on the tech conference that we're preparing. We're gonna have a panel dedicated to women in tech, and we can expand this to this universe as well. Because unfortunately, there are quite many industries that still have low female presence, and historically dominated by men. Industries that in these days have absolutely no argument to still be directed by well, not say exclusively men, but 90% men presence. And that's not okay. Now, you mentioned 2020, 2021. What difference do you see in the streaming industry from take this moment and compare it with last year, the same time? Do you see things happening as the trends were predicted, or are things changing?
Well, it's difficult to predict given the uncertainty that was happening during the last couple of years, which we didn't know, how long we're going to be in lockdown and how the pandemic will change the situation. So that definitely made almost impossible to predict what is going to happen, as it was very, very dependent on the situation. But what I can say that was a good, at least for the industry, was a good fact is that the growth did not stall. It did not stay flat compared to last year. There was some thinking that maybe the live streaming community will not grow this past year because it grew so much the previous year. And there was maybe a smaller room for growth, but that didn't happen. That said, on Q4, Twitch only grew about 5% compared to the last quarter, to the Q4 of the last year. So that might also indicate that the growth for next year might not be as big as it was, as the 22% that we had for last year. So there is that. But as I said, this is a highly moving industry, and one of the values that we bring is to help the companies understand how rapidly this is moving. And we don't know the moves from the companies, from these companies. And let's not forget that this is a battle of titans, of really big companies. We have Amazon, we have Facebook, Alphabet. We might even have Apple doing a lot of new things on VR and gaming. So it's really the biggest companies in the world battling for viewership and for presence and for dominating gaming. So it's I think unexpected things can happen as well next year.
Just a personal curiosity, around how much time, I know it's a numbers question, and I'm not expecting a straightforward number as an answer, but about how much time does it take for a game that is currently trending to be trending in the streaming industry as well? Because I know that they're intertwined, but under my logic, I see a delay between the moment that a game is trending and the streaming of that game to be trending as well?
Yeah, I think that will depend on the strategy of the game maker when it comes to their presence in live streaming. One of the things that we do in the company is to help game publishers manage their strategy, at least partially, when it comes to activating in this media. And by activating, I mean partnership with other creators, maybe launching an esports tournament, or partnering maybe with a team or with our organization. So if the game maker thinks that live streaming is going to be very beneficial to the popularity of their game and there is a great fit with this community, it's best if they have a strategy and not let things pick up organically, which it happened and it will continue to happen. You have like smaller games that might take 2 years, and you have a big creators playing a game that's 2 years old, and all of a sudden it becomes very popular because that creator started to play that game. So you don't need to do all that, but if you want to have a speed and you want to know that when I launch a game in like less than a month, my game is going to be popular, you might want to invest on working with creators to make your game popular.
I see. Now, can you give us some examples on how games companies or other brands are using the streaming data that your company produces?
Yeah, there are definitely a variety of ways, and that would go back to the idea of a microscope or a telescope. It really depends if the company is looking for trend analysis to make big decisions whether they want to invest in the industry or not, or particular activations. But to give you more, to elaborate a little bit more on this, for brands specifically, a lot of brands are not investing too much in esports these days. Some endemic brands are, but like the non-endemic brands are still with a little bit of skepticism to came into the gaming media. And if they do, sometimes it's maybe not with a large enough budget. So the way that we think about it is that we have to provide the data that helps them make that decision. And by that, I mean, if you put in their shoes, they have a lot of options. They can go to linear TV, they can do paid advertisement, they have like endless amounts of options. So we have to make the data accessible for them so that they can compare to the rest of the marketing mix and say, now I will understand that when I invest into creator or when I invest into an esports tournament, my return is going to be X or Y. And comparatively, that's better than when I invest on linear TV or other kind of sponsorships. So that's one of the biggest jobs, one of the most difficult things that we're currently working these days to make that decision more transparent for the brands. When they came onto Twitch these past few years, for them it was more or less a black box, or more or less a very complicated thing. They have it very easy to invest on other media for Google ads, for linear TV. All that is fairly easy for a brand to understand how much they're investing, how much they're getting back. For live streaming gaming, it was probably not that easy. So that created resistance. We're trying to help reduce that resistance. And then for the game publishers, they use it in many different ways. So some could be using esports and live streaming to make their games popular without really expecting a return on that activation. So it just, by making my game more popular, we're gonna have more gamers playing our game, and that probably translate into increase in sales at some point. And that's one way to look at this. Another way to look at this is, try to monetize esports by bringing sponsorships and maybe other elements. So depending on what their strategy is, and we help them with 1 or 2 or 3 ways.
I want to talk about a big boom in the industry. Microsoft taking on Activision Blizzard. I think that was one of the biggest news that I've heard for a while regarding the gaming industry, and I think it was one of the biggest news that personally affected me as being one of the players. For years I'm playing Blizzard games, Activision Blizzard, and now I can say I'm playing Microsoft games as well. Now, I know that your company put out some data on what this acquisition meant for the market share of the streaming audience. And I would like to know, what is your viewpoint on this? What are the opportunities and the risks as well for the new company?
Yeah, that was another huge and unexpected thing, at least from my perspective, that happened. It was not unexpected that Microsoft will go on buying more companies, because they've said that repeatedly, and they've been doing that. But the fact that they went to pretty much acquire the biggest one that was available out there, it was a pretty impressive and bold move from their side. I mean, Microsoft is going to multiply by 3 their presence on live streaming by these acquisitions, combining their titles with the Activision and Blizzard ones, which are quite popular on Twitch and the other platforms. It really goes to the idea of all these companies have taken gaming very seriously, and they are not gonna let it organically grow at the pace that it should be normal. I mean, they really bet in gaming, and they believe that gaming is showing big growth. I think the industry is usually forecasted to grow around 10% a year, 8%, depending how you look at things, but it's probably one of the highest growing industries as a whole in the planet. So I guess it's not a surprise that these companies have realized that, and they want to double down their investment in the industry and their presence. But it's definitely going to be very, very fun the next few years to see how these companies play their cards and continue to contribute at the end of the day to gaming being better and bigger for all the gamers.
I'm really curious to check in a while from now on the general opinion of players after this big move. I mean, it happened like it would have happened on any shocking thing. There would be the against, there would be the pro, and there would be the meh guys. And in the players community, the gamers community, things happen in the same. There were people that were excited that Microsoft took over. There were people that were very, very much upset that Microsoft took over this, and there are people that are generally don't care about this. And I'm really curious to see how these percentages will shift after a while. But that's a thing about the future. And since we've talked about the past and the present, let's talk a little bit about the future. Where do you see the streaming industry going in the next years, the next couple of years? What are your predictions?
Where to start? I think there's gonna continue happening these acquisitions of companies and partnerships and moving pieces like a chess game. Like we saw a lot of activity with YouTube and Facebook signing deals with creators that were maybe on our platform. So I think that's going to continue to happen. These platforms are going to continue to try to capture more creative talent by signing some exclusive deals with the creators, and probably teams and talent agencies and organizations that represent those creators and that content. Obviously esports as well. So esports might be esport content might be switching platforms to to find a better deal for those producers. So that's going to be a very interesting trend to continue to analyze and see happening. I think Facebook and YouTube, and to some degree Twitch, will continue to grow into new regions and expand in territories that today don't have maybe that large presence. And probably lastly, I would mention that things like these platforms becoming much more interactive. The metaverse is going to continue to be around for the years to come, and how that concept of the metaverse get translated into day-to-day platforms like these is going to be a very interesting trend. And I can imagine having, much more interaction with VR headsets, plugging into Twitch, and more interaction between the creator and the audience into maybe shapes or forms that it's difficult to imagine today.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Eduard, for this insightful discussion we've had. I'm thanking you once again, and I'm inviting our audience to stay tuned, to keep on subscribing to our podcast, and of course, for those of you that are interested in gaming tech and tech alone, we are preparing some really awesome panels in the tech conference, the spring edition. But until then, stay tuned. Tune on HIPTHER.com/podcast to check all the available platforms for our podcasts. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very, very much, Eduard, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Alex. It was great being here.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next HIPTHER Talks, and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.